your existing creative practice. Yes, I will be talking about how you already visually communicate semiotically. Yes, without realising it until now. Semiosis 101 is about enhancing your current creative practice with semiotic sign action, one semiotic sign at a time. In the next 3 episodes in this second omnibus, you will get all empathic as semiosis meets second order thinking to understand your target audience. Let's get empathising. Welcome to the second omnibus edition from Semiosis 101's Season 4. In this omnibus, I collect the next 3 episodes of Semiosis 101 Season 4 into a single edition. These 3 episodes can be watched back to back in this edition on the subject of Semiotics Sign-actioneers, second ordering semiosis. If you have watched any Semiosis 101 episodes before, then you already know I am Dave Wood and I explain Charles Sanders Peirce's semiotic theory of semiosis, semiotic sign action, in designer-centric terms. Season 4's overall semiotic theme is on developing a new semiotic mindset to help enhance how you visually communicate. Semiosis 101 will build your confidence to apply semiotic sign action into your own designs or illustrations to enhance how you visually communicate. Why do you need Semiosis 101? Peirce's semiotic writing and terminology is unfortunately very obtuse. After all, we study design and illustration and not philosophy, so we need theory centered to creators' needs. Yes, that is why you need Semiosis 101. So subscribe and let us jump straight into Semiotic Sign-actioneers, second ordering semiosis. We will become a semiotic Sherlock Holmes in this 4th episode of Semiosis 101's Season 4. We investigate the cultural clues which our target audience can provide us with to show how they will interpret. Last episode, I left you all with the realization that semiotic signs are not single use. Semiotic signs are always in plain sight within any design or illustration. Encoded semiotic signs initially lie dormant until perceived and can release deeper meaning. Semiosis's determination flow cycles between concept, representation, and interpretation. This semiotic sign-action flow is not linear or helical. Each interpretation the audience makes from perceiving what is represented unlocks a facet of the concept being visually communicated. Your visual language decisions are meaning-bearing visual elements. Encoding semiotic sign-action begins with weak semiotic qualities. These semiotically trigger audience perception through familiarity to suggest the concept. Historically, semiotics in the creative industries has been applied analytically as a post-production tool. Thankfully, in recent years there have been major inroads by semioticians to seek ways to apply semiotic theory. Semiosis 101 is on a slightly different tack. I am a practitioner first and a semiotician second. Plus, I obviously advocate Peirce's pragmatic semiotic theory over Saussure's and Barth's. A criticism of semiotics within design is one of semiotization. Klaus Krippendorf argues in the concept of design artifacts that if designers of artifacts were to conceptualize the meanings of artifacts in semiotic terms, invite pretentious semiotizations, deceptions of the users regarding the artifact's nature. I do not intend to enter this debate directly. My practitioner-led designer-centric focus on Peirce's theory is not a semiotization of intended meaning. Semiosis is not first-order thinking. As I've laid out, semiosis is dependent on the audience to be successful. Meaning is semiotically encoded and released through helical cycles of interpretation of the representation of the concept. A creative will use their visual language to visually communicate the intended concept through their aesthetic. However, this is not semiotization as Krippendorf frames it, nor is it a post-production analytical deconstruction. Semiosis is semiotic sign action between creatives and the audience. So let's move beyond semiotization or deconstruction to actual semiotic sign action. As Peirce clearly states, nothing is a semiotic sign until interpreted. The visual language a creative uses to visually communicate the concept a client desires is rich in semiotic signs, whether the creative is aware of encoding them or not. Any meaning these signs suggest remains dormant. Meaning is always dormant until perceived as meaningful. The cycle of semiosis between concept, representation, and interpretation does not end at interpretation. What does the representation represent? Seldom will meaning come fully formed in a single cycle through this semiotic determination flow. Interpretation will, if successfully visually communicated, lead the audience to the intended concept. So the actual determination flow is concept, representation, interpretation, concept. The audience interprets levels of meaning based on their level of attention and lived experiences of what they already know. In this way, from simple semiotic signs that resemble qualities associated with the concept, right up to more complex, generally agreed representations, anything can be semiotically communicated to anyone. The creative audience is proactive in the construction of the encoded meaning. This is facilitated by the illustrators or designers' visual language decisions. This means that not everyone in the audience will arrive at a complete interpretation of the concept. However, the target audience can still interpret facets of the concept from encoded semiotic sign action attuned to different levels of audience perception. All I have outlined here is the audience's subconscious perceptual process framed within Peircean context. These levels of interpretation based on audience perception are very subtly semiotically structured. I mentioned in the previous episode the immediate dynamic and final states of interpretation and the phenomenological states of Peirce's firstness, secondness and thirdness. Check out the relevant YouTube playlist to find out more. On Semiosis 101, I am clearly focused on connotational rather than denotational meaning. I'm not talking about whether an image of a dog communicates dog, rather what this dog image is really trying to communicate. Let me explain in simpler terms. We are not concerned with this is this. That is denotational. A child's book that says D is for dog is denotational. If an image of a snarling and fierce dog is on a wall outside a compound, that is connotationally communicating something more than dog, is it not? Both communicate dog. Yes, what I've just described is signage. However, semiotic signs are not signage, but signage uses semiotic signs. Check out episode 2.1 on this distinction. Semiotics is concerned with more complex meanings being visually communicated. Representing the verb snarling is an act of semiotic encoding. The dog is visually snarling. What can this mean? We are always trying to find ways of using what we see to really communicate the actual concepts to our audience. Why? Why bother? Why not just say or show this when we mean this? The world is not black and white. There are levels of communication and ways to keep people's interest. Graphic design and illustration are two ways that humans have developed to add richness to how we understand the world. Advertisers long ago realised that saying buy beans does not result in people buying beans. Or if you want to read more about this, then check out the Semiosis 101 semiotic resource on Ghost. Link is below in the description. People want to be engaged. Visual communication design is essentially enriching on many levels. The audience wants to be treated intelligently and not patronised. Applying semiotic sign action into designs and illustrations stimulates more than the audience's senses of sight, touch, etc. The stimulation of the emotional, the intellectual, and the desirable are also important aspects of effective visual communication. Semiotic sign action helps illustrators and designers to qualitatively engage directly with the target audience. You creators decide what the audience sees in a design or illustration. However, what the audience perceives from what they see is based on their lived experiences. Meaning is interpreted from what the audience already has experienced. More complex meaning evolves from this point. Semiosis helps facilitate audience perceptions towards interpreting the intended concept by how you creatives craft your visual language. From initial weak semiotic qualities of mark, colour, shape, etc., your audience's attention can be subconsciously hooked and retained. E.g., that quality makes me think of X. Is it about X? This is where understanding your audience's cultural clues is crucial. From subconsciously hooking the perception with the visual language, the visuals can begin releasing more meaning as the audience subconsciously interprets. Of course, a single weak semiotic quality can't on its own visually communicate complex concepts such as the Gettysburg Address. Neither can the letter G on its own communicate a complex thing. This is why we refer to the aesthetic we create as a result of the visual language we choose. Complexity of meaning grows from simple building blocks. Semiosis helps you to semiotically encode the means to unlock the meaning. Any meaning lies visually dormant in plain sight until perceived. That perception needs triggering, but interpretation needs time. From a pragmatic perspective, the aesthetic choices you make in the visual language you choose needs to retain your audience's attention. In the spirit of this season's theme of a semiotic frame of mind, I asked the question, how will our creativity benefit from audience perceptions? Contrary to creators making semiotizations in their work that forces the audience to accept only what the creative says, Peirce's semiosis, if applied mindfully, puts the creative and audience into a mutually beneficial communicational situation. If you've got this far with me, you may be thinking, fine, how do we do this if we never meet our audience? Next episode, we will explore how the logic of design can help us. So subscribe to be notified when this next free episode is published, or become a Semiosis 101 producer on Patreon and watch all future episodes months ahead of YouTube with other exclusive producer-only content. Hint, hint. We will be going all phenomenological in this 5th episode of Semiosis 101 Season 4, as we explore how to understand our target audience's life world, or lived experiences, if you prefer. Whenever we begin any visual communication job, we research and ideate possible starting points. We enter this period of ideation with sketches and scribbles of possible things. These may eventually be iterated into more sophisticated and complex elements. During ideation, we flex our creativity. We craft a visual language to visually communicate the ask of a brief into designed and/or illustrated outcomes. These aesthetic outcomes are already rich in potential semiotic communication. We create these aesthetic outcomes for other people. To facilitate successful visual communication to your audience, you need to tailor your visual language to that audience. Semiosis means semiotic sign action. This sign action is the semiotic effect of your aesthetic visual language on the minds of your audience. What will the effects of this semiotic sign action be? What meaning will the audience interpret? Creators often begin jobs with very little real audience insights or research into what your audience already understands. Abductive reasoning is a crucial tool for you to form a picture of your audience's experiences. This is one of 3 forms of logic and has also been described as the logic of design. Peirce also calls abductive reasoning hypothesis. A working hypothesis begins with immediately known facts about your audience. It will evolve as the creative gains more knowledge. I discuss Peirce's abductive reasoning in depth in Season 2 and Season 3 episodes. Check out the working hypothesis playlist. What happens if audience life worlds are ignored? You design a brochure for a Far East client for funerals. You use black to suggest mourning. Your client is not happy. You then discover white and not black is their funerary colour. This is not just miscommunication, it is also what happens if you adopt first order thinking. First order thinking is a God view which assumes that everyone else sees the world as you do. That is why the phenomenological term life world is very useful. This episode's focus will help you to develop a fresh semiotic mindset of your target audience's experiences. You can ensure that your visual language aesthetic decisions align with audience life worlds as you ideate. By developing a working hypothesis of your target audience, it will help you change from first order thinking to second order thinking. First order thinking situates you in a God view of what people should interpret from your work. You therefore make blind assumptions on what you expect your audience knows, wants, needs, etc. First order thinking is where miscommunications are made. First order thinking is why amazing designs and illustrations underperform. You may be incredulous and exclaim, how can those morons see a toilet and not a business centre from my amazing creation? No, your audience are not morons if they interpret something different from what you intended. Their life will suggested different meanings. A working hypothesis is the opposite of first order thinking. Reimagine yourself as a facilitator of visual communication between client and audience. Your ideation phase will then become a logical process from not knowing to knowing. Hypothesis will help you to evolve understanding your audience's life worlds. A small change in your mindset as a creative is crucial for you to make more impact. We are never illustrating or designing for ourselves. Artists pose questions, designers and illustrators solve creative problems. An illustrator and designer can also be artists, but within a commercial application of your skills, you are a visual communication problem solver for your client and your audience. This is where adopting second order thinking is crucial. Semiosis helps you to apply into your visual language what a hypothesis reveals about what your audience already has experience of. These audience insights can semiotically help to hack your aesthetic decisions to attract and retain their attention. Semiosis is pragmatic semiotic theory, a pragmatic view of experiences that old experiences inform new experiences. Interpreted visual meaning emerges from previous familiar experiences. Therefore, hypothesis helps you creators to reveal and understand previous familiar audience experiences. Previously, I have used an example of cinema-going target audience's familiarity to cinematic darkness, which suggests suitable a visual language to semiotically connect with that audience. This demonstrates applied second-order thinking. Check out episode 213 for more on this example. Or if you want to read more about this, then check out the Semiosis 101 Semiotic resource on Ghost for further written content in the form of 5-minute reads. Link is in the description. Second order thinking is empathic and changes your point of view to see design solutions through audiences' life worlds. We can see second order thinking and hypothesis at work in the cinematic darkness example, revealing insights that darkness can be positively familiar and comforting. A pragmatic semiotic frame of mind treats the aesthetic as proactive rather than classically passive. Klaus Krippendorf states that design was born into an ambiguous relationship with aesthetics. The aesthetic is important to designers and illustrators, but it is not passive. Its main purpose is, pragmatically speaking, to not only attract attention, but to retain it. A classical understanding of the aesthetic is in a celebration of beauty for beauty's sake. From a pragmatic perspective, aesthetics is culturally situated. Its visual language is like any other form of communication. It has a sophisticated grammar constructed from micro-elements as building blocks. Like letter forms, visual communication begins with simple marks. These marks are composed together in varying ways to mediate complex communications. Peirce frames semiotic mediation on the audience as a proactive act between interpreting meaning from the visual and the effect that interpretation has on the audience. John Dewey, a founding pragmatist, argued that we do not appreciate aesthetics solely cognitively. As embodied subjects, we emotionally and intellectually have aesthetic experiences. Fellow pragmatist Richard Schusterman develops this. He frames the function and value of aesthetics lies not in a specialised means end, but in serving a variety of ends. The instrumentality of aesthetics is not predefined, but is emergent with its use. You designers or illustrators ideate consensus around ideas, which continue to evolve under changing condition solutions as you strive to answer a brief. In doing so, Meredith Davis says you remain adaptable to new, unpredictable circumstances. Wright et al. Defines these unpredictable circumstances as your audience acting, sensing, thinking, feeling, and meaning making in a setting including their perception and sensation of their own actions. The effect of interpreting the meaning-bearing aesthetic. The aesthetics in visual communication outcomes attracts and retains attention of the audience and facilitates action. It works from an experiential grounding that is based on the reception of the design or illustration by the audience. This aesthetic reception is interpretive, involving the audience's cognitive and emotional responses. The effect of a semiotic sign on the perception of each audience member results in each individual developing a perceptual relationship not only with the message but also with the source of the communication. This source is your semiotic representation of the concept message. If we return to Meredith Davis's comment from a moment ago, within graphic design you can take several keywords to now unpack further. consensus, evolve, changing condition solutions, adaptable and unpredictable are words she selects to discuss how creators approach ideas and circumstances. During your ideation phase of creativity, you will be sketching possible ways to solve the client's communicational need. We can call this ideation the what could be phase, which is reasoned abductively. Peirce sees abductive reasoning as a form of guessing or inference to the best explanation, where reasoning evolves around understanding of your target audience. From a working hypothesis, you can then logically reason the most appropriate solution to aesthetically hook audience attention. Then, semiotically, attention can be retained long enough to visually communicate to them. In the next episode, I will focus on how semiosis can be applied to achieve this. Subscribe to be notified when it is published, or become a Semiosis 101 producer on Patreon. Watch all future episodes months ahead of YouTube and get a producer credit. Hint, hint. I use the term visual language a lot. So in this 6th episode of Semiosis 101 Season 4, we establish what we mean by this term and how pragmatist aesthetics offers you a fresh way to consider your visual part in communicating. I have always stated that semiotics is not a linear how-to process. Semiotic signs are not signage, so there is not a code book of signs that you can index and select an appropriate sign. Semiotic signs are encoded meaning built up from weak semiotic qualities. Semiotic sign action is how the target audience interprets the representation of the concept you make. Perception is crucial to successful visual communication, and your aesthetic just aids your audience to sense the encoded meaning. You creatives have the power to facilitate your audience's perception. Klaus Krippendorff, in his The Semantic Term book, discusses sense in design. The quality of what we are immediately conscious aware of. Sense is always someone's sense. It is an embodied phenomenon. Sense cannot be reduced to the physics of its triggers. I use triggering to describe how an audience begins to sense, perceive, and interpret what a creative has semiotically encoded into the visual language of their aesthetic outcome. Semiosis is already in plain sight encoded within the aesthetic. However, semiosis remains semiotically dormant until the audience senses that what they are perceiving is meaning-bearing in some way. For the process of semiosis to begin to unlock this encoded meaning in the mind of the audience, there is always a moment of not perceived before being perceived. Your aesthetic plays on their senses. I agree with Krippendorff that we cannot quantify sense, nor can we quantify perception or the triggering of a meaning-bearing semiotic sign. While Krippendorff may not warm to Peirce's semiotics, I have found Peirce's 3 states of firstness, secondness, and thirdness a useful framework to semiotically ideate solutions. Peirce's pragmatism utilizes a mindset that has a phenomenological focus. These 3 states are a sense of flow. Just remember that we learn in design school to rely on our creative muscle memory. Remember earlier I said semiosis is not a linear how-to process too? Relax into the theory of semiosis and absorb it naturally into your existing creative process as you ideate. Do not fret if I am doing it right. Let us move forward beyond the terms into how semiosis benefits your ideation and sketching. If you are relaxed, we can now explore how your aesthetics visual language can semiotically retain your audience's attention. This retention in their attention affords the audience more time to sense, perceive, and interpret the intended meaning from how you have crafted the visual language. Remember, perceiving and interpreting may take milliseconds, or encoded meaning may only be interpreted after multiple views. What do I mean? How many views did it take you to perceive the arrow in the FedEx logo, or perceive the smile in the Amazon logo? The arrow and smile were always in plain sight. Yes? Semiosis is helical and not linear. Semiosis in the subconscious mind of the audience cycles through the concept, representation, interpretation, concept, representation, etc. in milliseconds. The audience's interpretation begins once a familiarity to something is triggered. As a process of interpretation of the representation of a concept, the audience's attention span and life world is how they understand your intended visually communicated meaning. Any aesthetic is not enough as a thing of beauty in itself. This is why a pragmatic framing of aesthetics helps you as a creator to understand the encoded semiotic power within your final aesthetic. In episode 4.5, we briefly explored the principles of aesthetics power emerging from its use. Check that out. As creatives, this retention of attention is obviously desirable. After all, we want our creative work to be appreciated. However, the retention of attention goes beyond personal creative egos. Retention of audience attention is what the client needs the creator to first achieve. Then the audience can interpret what they perceive. Semiotic sign action is a transaction. The visual language you designers and illustrators use in each commercial job is where you can semiotically encode deeper meaning. Remember, we are not concerned with the denotational communication, e.g., this is this. I am focusing you onto how to craft the appropriate visual tone of voice to connect with your audience. The connotational communication of meaning, e.g., this now means that. This is sense-based communication. It is subtle by the visual facilitation of crafting the appropriate mood for the audience with the visual language. The concept is whatever the client wants visually communicated from their brief. The concept is then semiotically delivered in 3 levels to the audience across 3 levels of representation. The audience then perceive the representation and interpret it across 3 levels. These levels are firstness, secondness, and thirdness. Peirce's semiosis is based on the power of 3s, triads. In design-centric terms, we can summarize these triads as perception power, possible, dramatic, suggested, dissent, resolves, arguments. Communication power, familiar, iconic, existent, indexical, proxy, symbolic. Delivery power, instant, quality sign, mediated, synth sign, agreed, leggy sign. I append Peirce's more obtuse terms to my designer-centric terms to emphasize the need for Semiosis 101. Or if you want to read more about this, then check out the Semiosis 101 semiotic resource on Ghost, or the video episode playlists on YouTube. Links are below in the description. How does this theoretical word soup help you illustrators and designers? These 3 levels of 3 help evolve your creative mindset to build into your aesthetic a consensus of meaning with your target audience. This will then help them to interpret. Let us not sweat over Peirce's terminology. We can later return to Peirce's obtuse terms. Instead, consider this statement. There is always a moment when we did not know something before we knew something. Now, there is nothing philosophically profound about that statement. We can call this spontaneous moment the triggering of semiosis. This subconscious level is when perception is formed by possibilities, communication by familiarities, and semiotic delivery is instant. It is the moment when not understanding turns to understanding, when the audience's perception switches from dormant to active. Perception activates the initial semiotic sign action and interpretation. Then the next level is when perception is formed by suggestions, communication by existent things, and semiotic delivery becomes mediated. The highest level is when perception is resolved, communication is by proxy, and semiotic delivery is agreed. Or in Peirce's terminology, the states of firstness, secondness, and thirdness. If you consider the semiotic delivery from simple to complex in design-centric terms, meaning is delivered instantaneously or mediated or agreed. This refers to how the visual meaning is unlocked by the audience's level of attention exposure. Red may suggest danger, but context, lived experiences, and social cultural agreements will lead the audience to an intended meaning. Perception of what is seen can be a possibility or suggested or resolved. Red is possibly a warning about something. It can strongly be suggestive of danger, or we can resolve that when we see a red flag on a beach, there are dangerous tides. Communication is by familiarity, iconic, or existent, indexical, or a proxy for symbolic. Let us see how semiotically manipulating these triads work. In Season 3, we explored semiotic manipulation in depth. watch Omnibus 3.5. Encoding semiotic signs are built from weak qualities to strengthen higher level signs. To begin visually communicating at higher semiotic levels, the audience needs to be facilitated towards the interpretations they need to make. With a fresh semiotic mindset, you can now understand that when you design or illustrate, you encode meaning to be triadically perceived, communicated, and delivered. The aesthetic choices you make to select appropriate visual language can be semiotically strengthened. In the next episode, we will look at a designed example to explore how this semiotically works. Subscribe to be notified when this is published, or become a Semiosis 101 producer on Patreon and watch all Semiosis 101 episodes months ahead of YouTube and receive other exclusive Patreon-only content. Hint hint. See you all again for the next Semiosis 101 episode. Semiosis 101 is unique in helping illustrators and designers to semiotically enhance your visual communication skills. One designer-centric semiotic video at a time. Remember to hit subscribe to be notified when the next episode hits.